Hello, everybody. My name is Beverly, and although I've been absent for a little bit, here, let me move this. I'm back to continue the series about men and women. So, I think I mentioned this in one of the other videos, but the main reason why I want to make these videos is so that if you desire to be in a relationship, if you desire to have partnership with a man, if there's anything that I can say to help facilitate that and make that possible, that's one thing I want to do. The second thing I want to do is to make sure that women know and understand that things have changed. The end of the feminist era has brought about a change in relationships that you really need to be prepared for. Because I made a video some months back. I think I made the video, but anyway, if I didn't make it, it was to be entitled Pink Pill is Dead. Pink Pill is Dead, which just represents feminism and the ideas surrounding feminism and the way that us as women were brought up to think, the way that society validated women's issues, and also kept men suppressed and silenced about how they were experiencing relationships in the larger context of a feminist world. So, so those two things. Feminism is dead. And if you want relationship, you're going to have to adjust. Now, people had relationships during the feminist era, which also corresponded with the explosion of broken homes, divorce, and fatherlessness caused by people just having children out of wedlock. And all this stuff went hand in hand with feminism. So feminism, it didn't serve relationships. So it's not that the death of feminism is going to cause relationships to get even worse. That's not even, a lake that we have to cross. The issue is that the thing that we let go of that allowed feminism to infect the society is the same thing that we have to go back to in order for relationships to be successful, whether we're knee-deep in feminism or coming out of it. The only answer, the way relationships work, God invented marriage. He created male and female, and therefore, in order for it to flourish and to meet the purpose, we have to do it God's way. If you take the key to your car, the only way that key is going to start your car is if you use the key the way it was meant to be used. In order to start your car, the key has to be in the car. In order for that key to start your car, that actually has to be the key for that car. It has to have a battery in it. So if you try to use the thing outside of its purposes, it's just simply not going to work. And that's where relationships have been. And there's some pretty radical changes that society needs to make, and we, particularly as women, have to make in order for relationships to be successful again, in order for things to fit. Now, are things going to be perfect? No, because they never were. Probably the last time things were perfect was in the garden before Eve ate the fruit and before she gave the fruit to Adam and he ate the fruit and sin entered in. Other than that, it hasn't ever been perfect and it won't ever be perfect. So the devil was able to take those imperfections and those things that aren't perfect and aren't going to be perfect and just magnify those things to women and say, see, men are garbage. You need to take care of yourself. You need to be, you need to decenter men and you need to focus on yourself and blah, 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 blah. So the devil's always going to be able to point to the imperfections of fallen life, which is what we have to walk out now as people in a fallen world. We have to now walk out a fallen life with the grace of God, with an imperfect person, which you are, paired up with another imperfect person, and the devil's going to always come to be what he is, and that is the accuser of the brethren. And through those accusations that he was able to make, he was able to convince women that they needed to ignore authority. They needed to ignore the hierarchy that God created, which was God the Father, Jesus Christ, man and woman and children. We need to just ignore those things. And children can have as much sense as their parents. Women can be equal and as capable of leading the family and making decisions as the husband can. And hey, listen, even go so far as we don't even really need to be listening to the Bible because, hey, you can have your truth. As Oprah got, what was that guy, Joel Osteen, to agree. Hey, there's more than one way to God. The Muslims do it their way. The Hindus do it their way. The non-Messianic Jews do it their way. And at the end of the day, we're all worshiping the same God, they like to say. But it isn't so. There's only one way to the Father, and that's through Jesus Christ. And Jesus is the Word. He is the Word. He is the Word made flesh. So if you're gonna find God, you have to follow Christ. And if you're gonna follow Christ, it has to be within the pages of the Bible. So we're going to get back to successful and fulfilling relationships, not perfect relationships. Remember that. The devil's going to always point to something that you can be critical of and that you can be dissatisfied with. But you have to go back to the Word, and you have to be a wise woman that builds her house instead of a fool that takes her hands and plucks it down. How do we build our house? On the rock. Jesus is the rock, and it's all going to go back to the Word. It's all going to go back to the Word. One of the big things the devil got women with was, you are non-productive and insignificant and insufficient as a human being because you have not made your mark on society out in the world, because you are wasting away in motherhood. You are wasting away in the house, matching up pairs of socks after you did the laundry, combing little girl's hair, planning out a meal for your family, keeping that house running smoothly, organizing the bills, whatever is needed around the house, a manager at home, and a helpmeet for your husband. So these things women have to return to, and you have to resist the urge that the devil is going to get you to despise those things and to feel like you're less than the career women or the the women that are outside looking like they're having so much fun. But you're going to have to keep in mind, look ahead, look down the line. Catch those women when they're out of their 20s. Catch them when they're even out of their 30s. When they're 38, 45, 55, and they're making videos crying about how lonely they are and how much they regret putting their career first and how they're crying about a guy that was crazy about them back in the day, back in their heyday, and they ignored him, and now he's with another woman and happy and has children and a son and a daughter that look just like him, etc., etc., etc. So you have to read the Bible, trust God's plan. I don't believe that there's anything better for a woman to be doing than to be a wife and a mother. That's so unpopular. That's so something you shouldn't say. Now, is there anything wrong if you don't want to make that decision to be a wife and a mother? No. I didn't even say that's the best thing for you to be doing. I just said there's nothing better. You can't point to the other decision, which is to just focus, get a career, be able to take care of yourself, set your life up as a single person with God as your husband. Nothing wrong with that. And there's really nothing better than doing that. It's just all about which one you want to choose. But where you're going to get into trouble, is when you try to blend the two of those things together. It will be better for you if you make a choice and be all in one or the other. If you're making a decision for your career, don't get married and then focus on your career. Because the purpose and the task of being a wife and a mother, you really should give it all your attention. You really should give it all you have. It deserves it. Your children deserve it. Your family deserves it. Your husband, your provider, your protector, your priest, he deserves it. And that is so anti-feminism, the anti-mindset that we were given, that God forbid we should focus on the needs of a man. Every last one of us have to admit that we have been taught that you are degrading yourself. You are putting yourself under the feet of a man, waiting to be trampled on, if you should even think about focusing on his needs. You're going to lose. That's what you've been told. So you're going to have some faith and be all in. Now, let's not be stupid. Let's not be silly. I'm not talking about people who are already in a lopsided marriage with a selfish, feminist-minded man. Because you being all in that marriage is going to get you trampled on. But I'm talking about people to get it right from the beginning. Get it right from the beginning. The most important decision that you're going to make, which is going to be the foundation of this biblical marriage. That solid foundation is, of course, always Jesus, the rock, biblical principles. How do we start? Number one, follow Christ. Be a Christian woman. Be a godly woman. If you are not following Jesus, you are not going to be able to pick the right man. You are going to pick the wrong man. You are going to fall for a wolf in sheep's clothing. But if you walk with Christ, if you walk with the Lord, and you remain aware and sensitive to the Holy Spirit, you're not going to marry the wrong person. Your number one key to not marrying the wrong person is, in the words of Tony Gaskins, if you know, you know. Close your legs. If you are fornicating, you're not following Christ. You are not building a biblical foundation for a biblical and blessed marriage. So, get serious about Jesus. Get celibate. Not celibate. What is the word? Well, you're celibate until marriage. Somebody pointed out, I heard a couple months ago, the difference between the words abstinent and the word celibate. Celibate is like a stick. You know what? Wait a second. Let's look it up. I hate stopping to look things up. Oh, my goodness. Celibate. A person who abstains from sexual relations. Okay. And then what's the difference between abstinent? And then abstinence, a fact or practice of restraining oneself from indulging in something. Oh. So, celibacy is just a specific instance of abstinence. All right, well, there you go. So, a promiscuous woman is not going to choose a godly man. You're not. There's all sorts of complicated mechanisms and games that are going on in the battle of the sexes. And those games, don't think that you're going to outsmart the devil. that you're going to get down and dirty with him in his playpen and you're going to win. That's what happens when you're promiscuous, when you are not practicing celibacy, which every single Christian person should be doing. If you are not sexually pure, you are a fornicator. You are on your way to hell. That's biblical. You're on your way to hell. And you are going to reap all of the negative consequences of sinning against your own body. You're going to end up as a baby mother. You're going to end up raising a child that will be like a table that deserves 4 legs and only has 2. And you can't even talk about this stuff because the people who have already fallen into these pitfalls, they selfishly would rather defend their shame and avoid culpability for the situations that they created for themselves and for their children to wallow in. They would rather defend these things than to save someone else from falling into them. So we're just going to have to take the heat and say it anyway, because you will be mobbed for saying these things. You want to show up, and this is some 2026 type language, you want to show up as the best version of yourself in parenthood. And that is with a sound, biblical relationship with Christ, which is going to lead to you being able to weed out the riffraff of men. There's a lot of riffraff out there. So when I talk about biblical marriage and we talk about hierarchy, we talk about authority and how the authority of God flows down through man into his wife and blah, 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 blah. When we talk about those things, I'm not talking about sinners. I'm not talking to sinners. I'm talking to people who name the name of Christ. The rest of those people, I'm not talking to them. I'm not talking about them. They can't walk into the light until they find the light. So I'm talking to those people who claim that they're Christians. And that's all I'm talking to. I don't expect other people to know what they don't know. But as a Christian, we should be digging into our Bibles. We should make it our business to know these things. Can you be a boss babe chick and a great wife and mother at the same time and at the same level? No. And there's a time in the process of raising children where that's really all you can do. That won't be the time to pour in to building your business. And the child rearing years are a season in your life. And just like a growing season, like in agriculture, there's a time to sow, like the Bible says, and there's a time to reap. And when your children are little and, they're tugging on your apron and they're calling your name over and over and over and they need you so much, That's a season. That's a time you're sowing. You're actively doing the work. But then there comes another time where those crops that you've planted, now it's time for you to go and reap, some 30, some 60, and some 100-fold. Now you got to do it right in order to reap that. If you don't do it right, you know what you're going to reap? You're going to reap having to raise your grandkids. That's what you're going to reap. You're going to reap your sons in jail. You're going to reap your daughters in abusive relationships. So we want to put our best foot forward as wives, as mothers, and be all in, or don't do it. If you want to build your career, go build your career. And there's nothing wrong with it. But being a mother is a huge job. It's a huge privilege. And it does pay, but only if you do it right. And I'm just going to say that a lot of women want pats on the back on Mother's Day. They want pats on the back on Father's Day. No matter what type of job they did raising their children. And you don't get to just lay up with a guy that you knew for 3 weeks, make a baby with him, and then play hero on Mother's Day and Father's Day and every day in between, before and after. And play a hero, a victim, and a martyr all at the same time. Because you're doing it all by yourself. Because you signed up for that. And you're going to jump all down anybody's throat who has nerve enough to say that. And all you're doing is gatekeeping the way God really meant things to go. You're keeping people who are coming behind you from learning the lessons that will make things better, because you want to cloud up the issue. Jesus said it the best. He said, "You do not enter in yourselves, and the people who are entering in, you hinder them." You didn't enter into doing things God's way. You didn't enter into parenthood God's way. And you don't want anybody else to enter into it the correct way either, because you want to muddy up the waters and make a whole bunch of noise whenever anybody wants to talk about the truth. Being a single parent is hard. It's supposed to be hard. Because it's hard for you to kick against the pricks. Point blank, period. Take your lumps. If you find yourself sitting around feeling sorry for yourself about anything, understand and embrace this one fact. When you are feeling sorry for yourself, you are hiding the shame that you actually should be feeling. Dig up under that feeling and find the truth, and that is, you are ashamed of something that you either did or you didn't do. Don't let the devil bring you that false security blanket. of pity. Pull that off. And get real with yourself and say, oh, nope, I'm not doing that. I brought this on myself. And by the grace of God, because his grace is sufficient for me, even though I brought this on myself, God is going to walk me through this. So we got to go back and we got to do things God's way. God did not intend the workplace to be 50% women. Because while all these women are out in the workplace, the homes are empty. And the children are home by themselves. And they're doing God knows what, and they're watching God knows what. And they're anxious, and they're insecure, and they're sad, and they're lost. Because they need parents. Build your life on the rock. Picking your husband. Not picking your husband, but being picked by your husband. And hearing from God is the most important decision you're going to make. Line yourself up with God. Seek to be filled with the Holy Spirit that will lead you and guide you into all truth. And realize there's nothing to be ashamed of because you love, support, and look up to your husband. Not any old clown that you pick because he looks so good. But a God man selected by God that you waited patiently for. Anyway, I guess that's enough for right now. In order to hear these things, there is an entire mind shift that you have to make. You have to have what they call a paradigm shift in order for these things to be processed in your brain. Because a carnal mind is going to fight against these things. It will reject them. It cannot understand them. And the mind that we were socialized with initially, including myself, even after coming to Christ, literally so brainwashed with these things that I'm still coming to understand how far away from the biblical standard that we are. So you have to have a literal paradigm shift in order to walk in and live in these things. I had a thought the other day that this brings to my mind. And that thought was excuses and success. Their paths never cross. If you're going to walk in excuses, you'll never have success. And if you ever become successful, it's because there were no excuses being made. And that's how this mindset, the biblical mindset, and that old mindset, that old man that we have, they cannot exist at the same time. They cannot exist in the same place. One of my favorite subjects in school was math. And I also especially enjoyed geometry. One of the concepts in geometry is the concept of the plane. not an airplane, but a plane, as in this represents a continuous surface that's flat. It theoretically has no thickness other than the thickness of one point. And it goes off in all directions, continuously, forever and ever and ever. And that is this one unique plane. Now, if I take this and move this up the coordinate system, say I'm on 0. I'm on the origin right now. If you remember graph paper, this ought to make sense to you. So this is the origin. So I go up 2, or say I'll go up 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm on this level. And this is another unique plane. It goes off in all 4 directions forever and ever and ever. And these things are perfectly parallel to each other. This one and this one. These 2 planes. And because they are parallel, the definition of that parallel means that these things go on and on forever and they never cross. That is the carnal mindset and the mind of Christ. If you're doing anything down here, up here, it does not compute. It does not register. It does not exist up there. All those concepts that we were raised with. Things like never feel sorry for a man. And all the double standards that we came up with. They all have to fall away. Because it's like excuses and success. If you indulge in excuses, you'll never have success. If you want to hold on to anything from that old mindset, you will never experience the joy that God created marriage to be. You'll never just be able to relax and let your husband lead. You'll never recognize that there's something different about them. That there are so many ways that you cannot possibly dream up. And that you were prevented by that old satanic mindset that we had. That you were prevented by that mindset from seeing about men. That they love women. They want women. And just about everything they do is for a woman. Those 2 different planes that we had, when we were on that lower level, in that carnal mindset, in that feminist, demonic mindset, that Jezebel spirit, that is a masculine spirit. And we've been taught to walk in all these masculine ways. And no relationship can work that way. With masculine women and feminine men. So we're going to have our minds renewed. Be open to it. Read your Bible, pray, submit yourself to God. And I would even say, to a certain extent, stop consuming all the online content, or most of it, because it's just a continuation of the war between the sexes. Because, as I've said before, men are moving toward a fault as bad as feminism. And that's the men's movement, the red pill. It is taking a dark turn. And that's where the carnal mindset is going to take it. And in my opinion, where it's going is polygamy, which is not the plan of God. It's not the plan of God. Jesus said God created them male and female. And for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. One wife. You're not qualified to be a deacon, a pastor, nor a bishop unless you're just the husband of one wife. It's not godly. I had a man put a comment on a video I made a long time ago saying, well, I can't find anything in the Bible against polygamy. Well, I just gave you 2-3 things just right there. God bless.